So merger and division, taking apart and bringing together, contraction and expansion. These two processes are the ambiguous dance that continuously struggles and perennially is left unsettled in its own teleology. What we find is that life itself is an ambiguous dance of merger and division, of taking apart and putting back together, of division and yet of unification. This can be seen to be the case on countless, countless fronts. Are you the world? Well, you're obviously not the world, but you're not the world. How are you related to other people? You actually came into the world through other people, and other people potentially, again, if you're a female, you get pregnant, right? A person will come into the world literally through you. Many aspects of you exist only in the context of other people. There's so many emotions that we feel that assume sociality, even if we feel them all alone. We can be all alone and feel remorse over something we did to some other person, and that person could be deceased, and yet we could still feel that way. Sociality is a condition. It's a way of being near to someone, but also being at a distance. Language is a kind of taking apart and bringing back together. That's what language allows us to do. It allows us to divide and then show how things are related once they've been divided. I say, the cap is black. I take blackness and I separate it from the cap, and then I show how that what has been separated is related to that. Countless, countless examples of creating us and them and we and I. Pronouns themselves are operators of unity and of divisiveness. There are so many fronts that this occurs on, right? Try to think of all the ways that life itself is an ambiguous dance of merger and division, of separation and of unity. This can be seen whether you're looking at the pulsing of the cosmos itself, or you're trying to get at the life's variety. When you do genus species, that's kind of what you're doing, is that you're looking for similarities and difference. The questions that go back in philosophy to the one and the many these are haunts. These are the old haunted stomping ground of the problem of merger and division. Right? Is there one thing? Is there many things? Look, if I hold up this object, you can see the object because of what's not the object, right? So there has to be a kind of figure-background relation. Well, what's the background for the background? Well, see, now it gets tricky. Now, you might say that it's the frame of this very film, and this film itself is becoming the frame within this. So I'm looking at the object, and then I want to see the background to this figure. Well, when I make the background a figure, what is the background to the now, when the background becomes a figure, what is its background? Well, you might say it's the film. But the film is here sitting, I guess, on a computer desk or on a television, and that itself is in a room. And then if we start to raise the question about what is that outer frame, there seems to be a problem of, I guess, my eyes or the horizon of my vision becomes this paradoxical frame. But even there, how do I see the very edges of my own vision? It kind of just fades off into I'm not really, I can see it here sort of on the side. I'd look from side to side. I can't really see where that outside horizon line is, that boundary or that frame that frames the framing. There does seem to be a kind of framing that goes on. And I think part of the issue that I'm trying to get at here is that we can't ever just make reality sit still. It's always in some dance of merger and division, right? There's babies being born, literally dividing off from the earth, and then there's people dying, actually merging back into the earth. There's breathing, where I inhale things and then I exhale things. I'm a pulsating merger and division. It's really interesting to try to ask the question of when does the ovum and a particular spermatozoan, when that contact, when exactly is that moment of merger and division, and when it lodges into the uterine wall? Again, this, what were separate that now became unified is now unified again, only to be divided later to be unified again. It seems as if life itself won't sit still. Even being awake and dreaming and sleeping, we oscillate between these kinds of states where if I fall asleep and I go into a deep sleep, it's a kind of absolute merger with everything. At least I can remember that I had been that undifferentiated when I wake up. But to wake up is to see the world as at a distance. Think of how often just our experiences in everyday life have this merger and divisive character to them. Sometimes we're, quotes, lost in an installment in the world. We feel the world in some way just is us. We're playing a sport and we say, I lost myself and time passed really quickly, and the next thing you know, I popped back and found myself in a reflective moment. Sometimes we're alienated, we're estranged, we feel like we're over here, the world's over there, time seems to drag. It seems very different. Go back to language. Look at how literacy allows for a taking apart and a bringing together, a kind of merger and division. By way of literacy, we're able to make connections between things that otherwise would remain unconnected. That is, connections between minds can be made possible over time through literacy. Literacy also allows people to take their own speech, which is intimately near and in fact is them, and turn it into a thing that is at a distance. Now I've separated myself from my speech. There it is in writing. I can look at it. It's an object. And now, as I've learned to use writing, I can use the writing system as a model for interrogating my own speech, so literacy merges back into my discourse. I think anyone here who listens to me on YouTube can verify that I speak like I've read many books. I probably speak, to many people they hear what probably sounds like a lot of book talk. I apologize for that. It is a symptom of having read quite a bit. I spent many years laid up with a very bad back, and I spent many years, that's pretty much what I was able to do. And look at issues like that of activity, of how much range we can have with the world, and how sometimes during moments of sickness, our whole world shrinks down. The size of the world is expansive or contractive. Have you ever noticed that your world itself expands and contracts? Joy, excitement. When you're in joy and happiness, the world is expansive and distant goals seem easily in reach. There's an expansive sense of the future. Depression is a contraction of the world. It's as if even simple nearby goals can seem distant. They seem unassailable. It's like we can't get past them or something like this. I think the way that I would just want to wrap this discussion up is try to think, if this doesn't make sense to you, try to think of all the ways that life itself is an ambiguous dance of merger and division that continuously goes on in merging and dividing. It's everything from eating and breathing and to babies being born, to the way that we separate past and present and future, to the way that those get merged again. It really is our life. It's the one thing that we seem not to be able to see because it's so omnipresent. Instead, we cut the world up in categories, and we cling to those categories because we fear that this unending merger and division is just too much. It may well be that life itself hasn't been able to resolve the ambiguity of being a unity or something that's divided. That was the struggle. And so life goes on as this unending dance. Okay, thanks.